Hello and welcome to the League of Women Voters of Chicago's Zooming with the Aldermen series of interviews. My name is Annie Logue and I am a member of the League, which was founded 101 years ago here in Chicago. And among our founders is Ida B. Wells Barnett. The League is a nonpartisan political organization that encourages the informed and active participation of citizens in government, works to increase understanding of major public policy issues, influences public policy through education and advocacy. And we are one of hundreds of local leagues all across the country working on voter rights and voter participation. These interviews with the aldermen are part of our efforts to educate people about those who represent us in setting the policies and ordinances that affect all of us here in Chicago. Today, our guest is Alderman Susan Sadlowski Garza of the 10th Ward. Welcome, Alderman Sadlowski Garza, and we appreciate your time to be with us.
Thank you, Annie, so much. I'm very proud to be here, and thank you for doing this project. I think it really helps people put a face to a name and get to know, people get to know us a little bit better. So thank you for doing this.
You're welcome. This Zoom session is being recorded. It will be available for viewing after today on the League website, and we will be sending you, Alderman Sadlowski Garza, and everyone who registered for this program who is not a member, a link to the video when it becomes available. And everyone should know that we have provided the alderman with a copy of the questions that I'll be asking ahead of time. But before we get on the questions, we want to show you, first of all, a map of all 50 of the wards here in Chicago. And the 10th ward, which is the largest by area, is way down at the bottom, and you can see it's cut off by the map. It is Chicago's east side, and sometimes we forget that the city has an east side. And here's a map of the
10th Ward.
Ward itself. It has 36 precincts, and you're bordered with Indiana, is that correct?
Yeah, we're the only ward that borders another state. No disrespect to anybody that lives in Indiana, but unfortunately, it makes it really hard for economic development here because I can walk to Indiana from my home. And, you know, taxes are cheaper, groceries, there's no taxes on groceries, gas is cheaper. And a lot of people cross the border to get their goods and services there. So it's a real competition for us. And it's something that I've been fighting for the past 6 years to say that, you know, that makes us very, very unique. We have to have some kind of incentive to bring businesses here because they can go 6 blocks to the east and do it a lot cheaper. So
I'm guilty of filling up my tank whenever I visit my sister-in-law in Schererville, Indiana.
Well, there you go. So you know exactly what I'm talking about.
I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yep.
So let's get started with the interview questions. And the first thing, of course, we've already talked a little bit about your ward and its boundaries. And can you talk about its makeup in terms of the mix of residential, commercial, industrial, and other types of employers and institutions there?
Yeah, sure. So as we said earlier, we have the biggest ward geographically in the whole city. We go from 83rd Street all the way to 137th. Our boundaries are on the east are the lake and the expressway on the west. We have 7 different neighborhoods in our ward: the Bush, Jeffrey Manor, South Chicago, Slag Valley, East Side, Hegwish, and South Deering. So each little pocket is made up of its own little tribe, I guess you could say. And they're all very different. They're all very different. Our ward is predominantly Latino. We do have a Black population as well as white people as well, white folks, and we are a true melting pot. when I was a kid, we had 9 steel mills here. And we had over 124,000 steel workers that lived just in the 10th ward. And it was people from all over the world would come here to work. So, and we still have like a little Italy, a Croatian, a Serbian, a Haitian community. And a lot of people don't know that. We're a very diverse ward. So I'm
Okay.
very proud of that.
What are some of the key issues that are facing the people of the 10th ward?
Well, when we talk to people in the ward, their first thing on out of their mouth is we need jobs. Because when the mills closed, we don't have any steel mills left here. When the mills closed, so did the residual effect, the grocery stores and the shoe stores and the restaurants, all those jobs left too. So we were left with a lot of brownfields and a lot of vacant land, and people need jobs. And we've always been a very industrial ward. We have the largest planned manufacturing district in the whole city as well. We also are home to the International Port Authority that, trades goods and services and commodities throughout the whole country. The Calumet River is a direct, it's a working river. There's almost, Ford employs 7,000 people, and there's another 6,800 that work at other various businesses. But it's a direct link to the St. Lawrence Seaway and to the ocean. So we see ships from Poland and Scotland and all kind of places coming here, docking at 92nd Street at the port. But that creates a lot of issues in itself with being such a heavy industrial ward. The cumulative effect of all those industries being here has played havoc with our health. So there has to be a balance between industry and residential. And we're working on doing some of the, making things better for folks. We passed an air quality ordinance, some of the strictest zoning ordinances in the whole country. People now have to have air monitors where we can monitor the air that we breathe. People have to be so many feet away from residential. Can't build a scrapyard across the street from a home, which we have one of those on the north end of my ward. That would have never happened under the air quality ordinance that we passed 2 months ago. So I'm proud of, doing the things that we're doing to make sure our residents are safe.
When did you first join city council, and why did you decide to run for alderman?
I have always been really active politically, but I was always the one knocking on doors. I was always the one supporting other candidates. I was a counselor in an elementary school in the 10th ward. I worked at that school for over 21 years. It was the same school that my mom went to, the same school that I went to, the same school my kids went to. And so I literally was inside in the walls of Jane Addams for 43 years. And in 2015, Karen Lewis put her hat in the ring for mayor. I was area vice president in the Chicago Teachers Union at the time. And she really said, come on, Garza, you're like the mayor of your neighborhood anyway. You're always involved in everything. Let's do this. Let's do this. And unfortunately, CTU ran 13 candidates in 2015. Karen was one of them as mayor. And unfortunately, in November, we found out that she had brain cancer.
Yeah.
And she had to drop out. And I was in a race with 7 other candidates, one of which was a 16-year incumbent. And it went to runoff, and I won by 22 votes. It was, if anybody says my vote doesn't count, I'm a living proof that that's not true. So
we have to remind people of that all the time, because there's a lot of races in Chicago. I think there's one downstate that was a tie. Then they're suing each other.
Yeah. I mean, look at Georgia. I mean, we have to vote. I mean, that's our voice. That is our
Come down
voice.
to the wire.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think we're really gonna see more and more of that. I really do.
Okay.
Because it's really, it's become very contentious.
Yeah. Do you still work as a school counselor?
No. No, I miss the children. I miss my students, more than you know. I actually have some of them that now work for me.
Mhm.
Some have gone on to bigger and better things, but I'm very proud of the fact that, I have young people, working in my office that were once my students. Being an alderman, it's people say, oh, it's a part-time job, but anybody that's doing this part-time is not doing the work. I work 7 days a week, 16 hours a day. You can ask my husband. He said, look, we've been together 37 years. I deserve one day. Can you give me one day? So, it's very hard to find a balance,
Mhm.
um, with this because it's nonstop.
Okay. Um, you mentioned that before we started recording that you are the chair of the Workforce Development Committee. And what other committees do you serve on, and what do you really like about the work that you're doing with the Workforce Development Committee?
Okay, so I sit on budget and government operations. I sit on the committee on rules. I sit on the committee in education and child development. I sit on the committee on ethics and government oversight. I sit on the committee on finance. I sit on the committee on health and human relations, committee on special events, cultural affairs and recreation, and I'm chair of the committee on workforce development. And I'm very proud of the work that my team, as well as myself, does on the committee on workforce. I grew up in a union household. My dad was a labor leader, and I've always been taught to stick up for the underdog. And right straight out of the box, when Mayor Lightfoot first got elected, we have been pushing legislation under the former mayor, a fair work week ordinance that would literally, it's just as basic as giving people a 2-week schedule. And we couldn't get it heard at all. And we
Hmm.
passed that. She took office in May. We passed that in July. Then we started working on raising the minimum wage. We passed that, and we are raising the minimum wage 2 years ahead of the state. We worked on an anti-retaliation ordinance that during COVID, if you got sick or you had to take off, your employer could not retaliate. And then we expanded that to make sure once the vaccines became available, we expanded that so that folks would be able to leave work and get a vaccine if they got an appointment. Because in the beginning of this, it was dog eat dog, right, for the vaccines. So right now we're working on a wage theft ordinance. Um, we've been working tirelessly with workforce development centers and the such, just to try to see what we can do to just elevate workers' voices.
Okay, great. Um, what changes, if any, would you like to see made in the operation of city council?
I don't think we I don't think we have enough time, but
Okay,
um
give me
I
one then.
I'll give you one thing. I think that city council members need their own parliamentarian. And let me explain a little bit. There's a lot of maneuvering that goes around. Corporate counsel is there to advise the mayor on if somebody is out of order or if they're doing something they're not supposed to do. We don't have anybody that's on our side because corporate counsel is on the city side. We represent the people. I mean, the mayor represents the people too, but we need somebody that would actually, we'd be able to say, is that correct? That parliamentary maneuver was out of order. We don't have that. And we need the city council members, the aldermen, aldermen and alderwomen need their own they need their own council. That's the one thing that we need, I think, desperately.
Yeah, parliamentary procedure is an interesting one, because on the one hand, it protects the voice of the minority. On the other hand, it can be manipulated.
Absolutely. And we've seen it over and over.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Would you be willing to allow the applicable departments to make decisions on some items that now require ordinances? For example, loading and standing zones, residential permit parking, traffic signs, grants of privilege in the public way?
I don't have a problem with anybody doing that work. But I do think whatever, aldermanic privilege is taken away, we cannot negate, we cannot not talk to the alderman.
Mhm.
Because, and no fault of the people that work in City Hall, but there's 50 of us and there's not one person that sits in City Hall, whether it's the mayor or the commissioner of Department of Planning or and develop, nobody knows my ward like me. Nobody. I've been
Mhm.
here for 61 years. I know every inch of it. I know every alley. I know every business. I pride myself on that. There's nobody that knows a ward like the alderman. So you can't take away things and not let us have input. Even if it's a conversation, I think that's so important. Because it's not just about, I'll get a paper that says, oh, Annie needs a driveway permit and I sign off on it. But, I'll say like, no, 130th, that's not going to work there because it's, those little nuances is what we know best.
Okay. Okay. The league has long supported having an independent commission draw ward boundaries rather than having the alderman determine them. Would you support the concept of an independent commission to draw the next set of ward boundaries? And if so, what are some of the key elements you'd want to see in that project? And if not, why not?
So yes, I have been told, I have never been through a remap, but I have been told to buckle your seatbelts because things get very ugly. For me, it's gonna be, I can't go south because Burnham, I butt up against Burnham Township. To
Mhm.
the east of me is the lake. The only way I can go is north or west. And there's a kind of a natural boundary but by the Borman Expressway. So yes, I would definitely support an independent organization to do it. And I think it would hopefully take the politics out of it. We saw during the last remap that aldermen were actually remapped out of their own ward.
Mhm.
There's a lot of, gerrymandering and a lot of things that go on behind closed doors that people don't have a say in. I would welcome it. And I think I would just communication, whoever does do it, communicates with the leaders within those boundaries, whether it's an alderman, a senator, a state rep, a commissioner for Cook County. We should be just viewed as partners, not cutthroat to get rid of people and push them out
Mhm.
and oh, we need this more of that more. So I would welcome an independent body to do it. Yes.
Okay. Okay. Um, so something else that we have been looking into is ranked choice voting. Currently, when one candidate for mayor or alderman does not receive at least 50% plus one vote in the February election, then the two top vote getters are put on the ballot in a runoff election in April. And what is your view about using ranked choice voting to determine the winner instead of a runoff?
I think it's a really cool concept. Um, I have one of my staffers, Julio Miramontes, who is a giant advocate of this, and he
Mhm.
is the one that schooled me on it. So, he was my student. Now I was his student in regards to this. So, but I think ranked choice is a true democratic process, right? That ensures people aren't pigeonholed into a corner to just pick one person. And I think that this would encourage more voter participation from people from a wide range
Mhm.
of things. And I know we heard even with voter turnout during the last mayoral election when we had 17 candidates. I mean, we had a 24% voter turnout. I think that if we had this ranking system, I think people might be more apt to say, well, I'm going to go out because now I can rank people. I just don't have one choice. I think it's
Yeah.
really cool. And, if New York can do it, I mean, a lot of times we hear in the city of Chicago, oh, Chicago's too big. We can't do that. We can't do that. But if New York can do it, I think we can too.
Yeah, I mean, it's been some big municipalities we've been looking at. So it's not just something for a small suburb.
No, I think San Francisco did it right, and Oakland.
Oakland and I think Boston.
Yeah, Maine. I know Maine did it.
Yes.
Yeah, and here's another thing too. My first election went to a runoff, right?
Mhm.
There were 7 candidates running in 2015. It went to a runoff between me and the incumbent. And the amount of money that is spent in that 6-week period, for me, I think is absolutely ludicrous. I was coming off being a counselor for 22 years and watching kids with no shoes and no electricity, and to send mailer after mailer after mailer, to people, I think is such a waste of money. And not only that, but even the Board of Elections, then if you're going to runoff, it's recount, money, money. I just, that money could be so much
Mhm.
spent, well spent somewhere else, rather than a piece of mail that goes in the garbage. That's like my pet peeve. I don't know.
Okay.
But-
And then 2 questions. One is, what is an initiative that you would love to have more citywide support for? And secondly, if the league or another organization wants to work with you, what's the best way to talk to you? Is it email? Is it ward night? I guess that's 2
So
questions.
the best way to talk to me is send me an email and I will call you back. I pride myself on calling people back. I have 56,000 constituents in my ward, and probably 46,000 of them have my personal cell. Which, I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but my dad instilled in me that the day you stop talking to your constituents is the day that you need to go.
Mhm.
So that's something that I pride myself on. I think the one big initiative that I would love to see adopted citywide, and love to have your help on as well, is bringing the trades back to the schools. I watched for year after year CPS push college bound, college bound, college bound, college bound. And we never give the kids the opportunity, or we never educate them that, hey, you can go to school to be an iron worker and make $100,000 a year. You can be a plumber, you can be a laborer, you can be, there's so many other avenues. And I've watched so many kids flail because, one, maybe they can't afford college. Maybe they just aren't, in academia. I mean, and that's okay. That's okay. And we've taken all those opportunities out of the school system. And, I've argued with CPS. They'll say, oh, no, we do. We tell kids, no, they don't. They do not. I lived in the largest planned manufacturing district in the city. And I watch kids from Stickney and Burnham and Indiana come to work at Ford because they get in these pre-apprenticeship programs somewhere else. And they're, it's right in my backyard. It's right across the street from the high school. So, and I only have one Chicago Public High School in my ward. So that's the initiative that we need to bring back. That's the initiative that my workforce staff is working on diligently. We are knocking on every door and talking to every person. We were making some headway with CPS, and the head of workforce development actually left last year. And now we lost, the number 1, 2, 3, and 4 people in CPS. So I don't know what the future holds there, but
Yeah.
because, here, the reality of this, Annie, is that if folks aren't putting food on their table, they don't care about anything else.
Right.
They're not going to go vote if they're worried about how they're going to feed their kids. And if we can educate people, whether to be, a fireman, an iron worker, plumber, an apprentice, or whatever, and get people working, the rest, it's a no-brainer. It's a domino effect.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, What are some of the things that that might be it. Are there other things that you'd like to get done or at least started during the remainder of your term?
Um, so I'm really proud to say I have so many projects in the works right now in my ward. This is gonna sound kind of silly, but I feel like we're a phoenix, like rising from the ashes because, and I say that because we really are. We were left with brownfields and flue dust from where the furnaces were, and we have a brand new development coming that actually Ford just hired 600 new people with a new building. We have 3 more warehouses going up. We have 42 new businesses that have come in the last 6 years that I've been here, and with all these new developments brings jobs, and that's, I just want to keep moving forward with, bringing people to my ward and showing them the 10th ward through my eyes. And because we have the only state park in the whole city, and you can literally hunt ducks, you can hunt deer with a bow and arrow there, Wolf Lake Conservation Area. We have Big Marsh Bike Park here. We have Indian Creek, Indian Ridge Marsh here. It's such a contrast between industry and nature. Anybody that would like to come and tour my ward, I would be happy to take them. And I do a taste and tour of the 10th.
Oh,
So anyone that's invited can, 10th ward at cityofchicago.org. And I do it myself. I'll take you around and just show you. We put on the old ore wall at US Steel, which is 480 acres of undeveloped lakefront.
uh-huh.
We put a climbing wall through REI. We're launching a kayak ramp. We're putting a kayak ramp there. We got 13 acres donated back from US Steel to build Steelworkers Park to commemorate the men and women that gave their blood, sweat, and tears, and sometimes their lives there for that mill. But we built this ward built the city of Chicago, and I'm really proud of that. The steel came out of our ward.
That is fascinating. And my last question is going to be if people want to come and visit, what should they do? So you're a step ahead of me.
10th
Okay.
Ward, 10th Ward, 10THWARD at cityofchicago.org or 773-768-8138.
All right. Well, Alderman Sadlowski Garza, thank you so much for being with us today. It was great to learn about what you're doing and to learn more about the 10th Ward, that it isn't just the place you drive through on the Skyway,
Right,
but that
right.
there's so much more there. I want to remind everybody who's watching that there will be a link to this program on the Chicago League's website. And everyone who registered for today's program who is not a League member will receive an email with the link, along with an invitation to join the League and sign up for notices of our future programs. As things open up, we're hoping to be doing a lot more of our Chicago in Focus and other types of public education programs. Next, we will be interviewing more aldermen over the summer, and we hope that you will join us for future Zooming with the Alderman programs. Thank you so much.
Thank
Alderman?
you, Annie. Thank you so much for having me here. I appreciate it very, very much.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
Come on down for a tour.